12 men walked alongside Jesus, spreading his message across distant lands. But after his crucifixion, their paths led to pain, persecution, and martyrdom. Their fates were sealed. One by one, they met tragic and brutal ends. But why? And what can we learn from their sacrifices? Welcome to Sacred Chronicles, where we uncover the hidden stories of biblical history. In today's journey, we will explore the final moments of Jesus' 12 apostles, how they lived, how they died, and how their sacrifices shaped Christianity. From crucifixion and beheading to exile and execution, their stories are filled with courage, betrayal, and faith. Stay with us as we uncover the tragic fate of each apostle and the legacy they left behind. They were fishermen, tax collectors, and zealots, ordinary men chosen for an extraordinary mission. The 12 apostles were handpicked by Jesus to spread his teachings, but after his resurrection, their lives took a dangerous turn. These are the 12 men chosen by Jesus. They walked with him, learned from him, and after his resurrection, carried his message to the world. Peter, Simon Peter, the rock of the church. Andrew, the first called. James, son of Zebedee, the thunderous preacher. John, the beloved apostle. Philip, the evangelist. Bartholomew, Nathanael, the true Israelite. Thomas, the doubting apostle. Matthew, Levi, the tax collector turned disciple. James, son of Alphaeus, the silent apostle. Thaddeus, Jude, the apostle of hope. Simon the Zealot, the revolutionary turned follower. Judas Iscariot, the betrayer. After Jesus' resurrection, the apostles faced a monumental task: to carry his message to the ends of the earth. With unwavering faith, they traveled across nations, some preaching in the streets of Rome, others venturing as far as India and Ethiopia. But their mission came at a cost. The apostles spread Christianity across the world, but their faith came at a terrible cost. One by one, they were hunted, tortured, and executed. Their stories are recorded in historical texts, church traditions, and ancient manuscripts. Let's begin with the man Jesus called the Rock, Simon Peter. Simon Peter, the leader of the apostles, was a bold preacher in Rome. But under Emperor Nero, Christians became targets. In 64 AD, after the Great Fire of Rome, Nero falsely blamed Christians and launched a brutal persecution. Peter was arrested and sentenced to death. Peter was crucified upside down, honoring his Lord even in death. His sacrifice became a symbol of unwavering faith, and his influence as the rock of the church endures to this day. Andrew, the brother of Peter, took the message of Christ to Greece, where he converted many to Christianity. But his teachings angered Roman authorities. Arrested and condemned, he was sentenced to crucifixion. However, rather than a traditional cross, Andrew was tied to an X-shaped cross, believing himself unworthy to die in the same manner as Jesus. For 2 days, he continued preaching from the cross before taking his last breath. His legacy remains in Scotland, where his symbol, the Saltire Cross, became the national emblem. James, the son of Zebedee, was one of Jesus' most devoted disciples. Alongside his brother John, he was among the first to be called by Christ. He witnessed the Transfiguration and was part of Jesus' inner circle, standing beside Peter and John at pivotal moments. After the resurrection, James fearlessly preached in Jerusalem, spreading the gospel despite the growing hostility toward Christians. But his faith made him a target. In 44 AD, King Herod Agrippa, eager to please the Jewish authorities, ordered his execution. James was arrested and sentenced to death, becoming the first of the apostles to be martyred. According to early Christian tradition, On the day of his execution, the very man who had accused him before Herod was so moved by James' unwavering faith that he converted to Christianity on the spot and chose to die alongside him. James was led through the streets of Jerusalem, surrounded by Roman guards, yet he walked without fear. As the executioner raised the sword, James is said to have prayed for those around him. In a single stroke, he was beheaded, sealing his faith with his own blood. His legacy did not end there. Centuries later, a tradition arose that his remains were miraculously transported to Spain, where they now rest in Santiago de Compostela. Today, pilgrims from all over the world walk the famous Camino de Santiago in his honor, proving that his martyrdom was not the end, but only the beginning of a lasting spiritual journey. John, the beloved disciple, was the only apostle who remained at the foot of the cross as Jesus was crucified. To him, Jesus entrusted the care of his mother, Mary. After the resurrection, John became a pillar of the early church, boldly preaching the gospel and spreading Christ's message across the Roman world. But his influence did not go unnoticed. Under Emperor Domitian, Christians faced brutal persecution, and John, now an old man, was arrested. Roman authorities sought to silence him. According to tradition, they even attempted to execute him by boiling him in oil, but he miraculously survived. Fearing his resilience, they instead sentenced him to exile on the barren island of Patmos. It was there, in solitude, that John received a series of extraordinary visions. Inspired by divine revelation, he wrote the Book of Revelation, a prophetic account of the end times, filled with vivid imagery and profound messages to the early Christian churches. After Domitian's death, John was allowed to return to Ephesus, where he continued to teach and write. Unlike the other apostles, he died peacefully of old age, likely around 98 AD. His life spared, but his words shaping the future of Christianity forever. Today, the ruins of the Basilica of St. John in Turkey stand as a testament to his enduring legacy, reminding the world of the last apostle who walked with Christ and bore witness to his glory. Philip, one of Jesus' earliest disciples, played a crucial role in spreading Christianity to distant lands. Known for his deep understanding of Scripture, he boldly preached the gospel in regions hostile to the Christian faith. His journey took him to Phrygia, in what is now modern-day Turkey, where he performed miracles and converted many to Christianity. However, his teachings angered the Roman authorities and local pagan priests, who saw his growing influence as a threat. Philip was arrested in the city of Hierapolis and sentenced to death. According to tradition, he was crucified upside down on an X-shaped cross, much like his fellow apostle Andrew. Despite his suffering, Philip continued to preach from the cross, urging his persecutors to embrace the love of Christ. Some accounts suggest that his followers later removed his body and buried him in Hierapolis, where he had left an indelible mark on the Christian faith. Today, the ruins of Hierapolis stand as a silent witness to his sacrifice, and his legacy endures in the faith of millions who continue to spread the message he once carried to the world. Bartholomew, also known as Nathaniel, was one of the lesser-known apostles, but one of the most devoted. After Christ's resurrection, he took the gospel to distant lands, including India, Mesopotamia, and Armenia. It was in Armenia that he made his most significant impact, converting the king, Polemius, and many of his people to Christianity. But not everyone welcomed his message. The king's pagan priests, furious over the loss of their influence, conspired against Bartholomew. They turned the king's brother against him, and soon a terrible decree was issued. Soldiers seized the apostle and he was condemned to one of the most gruesome deaths recorded in Christian history. According to tradition, Bartholomew was flayed alive, his skin torn from his body before he was finally beheaded. Despite this horrific fate, he never renounced his faith. His death became a symbol of unwavering devotion, and his story spread far beyond Armenia. His relics were later taken to Rome, where they remain in the Basilica of Saint Bartholomew. To this day, he is venerated as the patron saint of tanners, bookbinders, and those who endure suffering for their beliefs. Thomas, often remembered as Doubting Thomases for questioning Jesus' resurrection, went on to become one of the most fervent missionaries of the early church. His journey took him farther than any of the other apostles, to the distant lands of India, where he preached the gospel to those who had never heard of Christ. According to tradition, Thomas traveled across southern India, converting many to Christianity and establishing several churches. But his growing influence angered the local Brahmin priests, who saw his teachings as a threat to their power. One day, as Thomas was praying in a cave near what is now Chennai, assassins were sent to silence him. A spear was thrust into his side, mirroring the wound Christ received on the cross. Thomas fell to the ground but continued praying until his final breath. His faith never wavered, even in the face of death. Today, his legacy endures in India, where the ancient Christian community, known as the St. Thomas Christians, traces its origins back to his mission. His remains are believed to rest in the San Thome Basilica in Chennai, a powerful testament to his journey and sacrifice. Matthew, once a tax collector despised by his people, became one of the most devoted followers of Christ. After witnessing the resurrection, he dedicated his life to spreading the gospel. He meticulously recorded Jesus' teachings, producing the Gospel of Matthew, one of the most widely read books in history. His missionary journey took him to Ethiopia, where he preached to both the nobility and the common people. Many converted to Christianity, including a local king. But this enraged the region's pagan priests, who saw their power slipping away. Determined to stop him, they convinced the new ruler to have Matthew executed. According to tradition, he was stabbed with a sword while leading a church service, his blood spilling on the altar where he had just preached the message of Christ's love. Though he was silenced, his words lived on. His gospel became one of the foundational texts of Christianity, guiding believers for centuries. To this day, he is revered as the patron saint of tax collectors and accountants, proof that even the most unlikely of men can become instruments of God's will. James, the son of Alphaeus, was one of the most faithful yet least spoken of apostles, often referred to as James the Less. He was a key leader in the early Christian church in Jerusalem, guiding believers through the growing persecution they faced. His devotion to Christ put him in direct conflict with the Jewish religious authorities, who saw Christianity as a dangerous movement. According to tradition, James was summoned before the Sanhedrin, the same council that condemned Jesus. He was ordered to renounce his faith. When he refused, the priests dragged him to the pinnacle of the temple, demanding that he deny Christ in front of the people. Instead, James proclaimed the truth of Jesus' resurrection. Enraged, his accusers threw him from the temple's highest point, but he survived the fall. As he lay injured, still praying for his enemies, a bystander struck him on the head with a club, ending his life. His final words were those of forgiveness, a reflection of the very gospel he preached. Though his name is less famous than others, James's leadership helped establish Christianity in its earliest days. Today, he is honored as a saint, and his story serves as a reminder of the cost of true discipleship. Jude, also called Thaddeus, was one of Jesus' most devoted but lesser-known apostles. Often confused with Judas Iscariot, he instead became a symbol of unwavering faith. He traveled far to spread the message of Christ, working alongside Simon the Zealot in Persia, where they converted many to Christianity. But their success angered the local religious leaders, who saw Christianity as a threat to their ancient traditions. They convinced the Persian king to put an end to their teachings. According to tradition, Jude and Simon were arrested and sentenced to death for refusing to renounce Christ. Jude was brutally beaten to death with a club, while Simon was executed by the sword or spear. Their deaths were meant to silence them, but their legacy endured. Today, St. Jude is widely venerated as the patron saint of lost causes, offering hope to those in desperate need. A fitting tribute to an apostle who never lost faith, even in the face of death. Their bodies were later taken to Rome, where their relics now rest in St. Peter's Basilica, a lasting reminder of their sacrifice. Simon the Zealot, known for his fiery passion and unwavering devotion to Christ, carried the gospel to far-off lands after Jesus' resurrection. He traveled extensively, eventually reaching Persia, where he preached alongside Jude Thaddeus, converting many to Christianity. But their growing influence angered the region's pagan priests, who feared losing their hold over the people. They convinced the Persian king that the apostles were a threat to the kingdom. As a result, both men were arrested and sentenced to death. According to tradition, Simon was either crucified or sawed in half, a brutal execution meant to discourage other Christians. Despite the suffering he endured, he never renounced his faith, standing firm in his belief that Christ was the true king. Simon's sacrifice, along with Jude's, did not silence the gospel. Instead, their martyrdom inspired countless believers, and their relics were later taken to Rome, where they now rest in St. Peter's Basilica. Judas Iscariot, the apostle who would forever be remembered as the betrayer, was once a trusted disciple of Jesus. Entrusted with the group's finances, Judas walked with Christ, witnessed his miracles, and heard his teachings. Yet greed, disappointment, or perhaps something deeper led him to conspire with the chief priests to hand Jesus over for 30 pieces of silver. On the night of the Last Supper, Judas left the gathering, and in the Garden of Gethsemane, he sealed his betrayal with a kiss. Jesus was arrested, and the wheels of his crucifixion were set in motion. But Judas did not find the satisfaction he expected. As Jesus was condemned, guilt overwhelmed him. The silver coins, once so desirable, became unbearable. In a desperate attempt to undo his betrayal, he threw the money back into the temple, but the priests refused to take it, calling it blood money. Alone and consumed by despair, Judas went out and hanged himself. According to the Gospel of Matthew, the priests used the returned silver to buy a piece of land, which became known as the Field of Blood, a grim reminder of Judas's fate. Some accounts, like the Book of Acts, describe his death differently, emphasizing the tragic consequences of his betrayal. Judas's story serves as a solemn warning, one of greed, regret, and the weight of one's choices. Unlike the other apostles who found redemption in martyrdom, Judas's fate was marked by despair. His name became synonymous with betrayal. But his story also stands as a powerful lesson on the devastating power of unchecked guilt. The deaths of the apostles are some of the most compelling stories of faith and sacrifice. But how do we know what truly happened to them? The New Testament offers glimpses into their trials, but most details about their martyrdom come from early Christian writings, church traditions, and historical records. The Book of Acts, written by Luke, records the martyrdom of James, the son of Zebedee, and the imprisonment and trials faced by Peter and Paul. However, many of the other apostles' deaths are documented in later historical sources, such as the writings of Eusebius, the first great church historian, and early Christian texts like the Acts of Peter and the Acts of Thomas. Roman historians like Tacitus and Suetonius confirm that Christians were brutally persecuted under emperors such as Nero, who blamed them for the Great Fire of Rome. Their accounts support the widespread belief that Peter and Paul were executed in Rome. The apostles' martyrdoms did not destroy Christianity. On the contrary, they strengthened it. Their sacrifices inspired believers to remain steadfast, even in the face of persecution. Their courage became a rallying point for the early church, proving that their message was worth dying for. Within a few centuries, Christianity had spread from a persecuted sect to the dominant faith of the Roman Empire. The very empire that once sought to erase their existence ultimately embraced their teachings, with Emperor Constantine legalizing Christianity in 313 AD and later making it the state religion. Today, their legacy endures. The apostles' tombs, relics, and churches dedicated in their honor remind us of the price they paid to spread the gospel. Their martyrdom was not the end. It was the foundation upon which Christianity was built. The apostles were ordinary men, fishermen, tax collectors, and skeptics, yet they became the foundation of a faith that changed the world. Their unwavering belief in Jesus Christ, even in the face of suffering and death, set an example for all future generations. One of the greatest lessons we learn from them is faith in the face of adversity. They endured rejection, imprisonment, torture, and execution, yet never renounced their belief. Their willingness to die for the gospel proves the depth of their conviction. These were not men clinging to a lie, but men who had encountered the risen Christ and were willing to stake their lives on that truth. Their sacrifices shaped Christianity in profound ways. By giving their lives for the faith, they proved that following Christ is not about power or earthly rewards, but about serving others and staying true to one's calling. Their martyrdom inspired others to stand firm, even in the darkest times. The spread of Christianity from a small group in Judea to every corner of the world is a testament to their impact. Because they remained faithful, the message of Jesus reached kings, emperors, and common people alike. Their teachings, recorded in the Gospels and epistles, continue to guide millions today. Ultimately, the apostles remind us that true faith requires courage, perseverance, and a willingness to trust in God's plan. Their lives were not easy, but they lived with purpose. And though they suffered, their legacy endures, proof that light can overcome darkness, and that the truth of the gospel will never be silenced. The story of the 12 apostles is not just one of history. It is a story of faith, sacrifice, and unwavering devotion. These men walked with Jesus, witnessed his miracles, and dedicated their lives to spreading his message, even at the cost of their own lives. Their legacy is not forgotten. Christianity, which started as a small movement, has spread to billions worldwide, thanks to the courage of these first disciples. Their stories remind us that true faith demands perseverance, commitment, and the willingness to stand firm in the face of trials. If their journey inspired you, be sure to like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into biblical history. And don't go anywhere.